Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and let me ask you something that might just change your life today. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you millionaire overnight? I'm talking about a coin so ordinary, so simple, that you've probably held it in your hands 100 times without giving it a second thought. But here's the thing, this particular coin, this 1973 Lincoln penny, could be worth an absolutely staggering $15 million. Yes, you heard that right, $15 million for a single penny. And before you think I'm exaggerating or making this up, stick with me because the story behind this incredible piece of American numismatic history is so fascinating, so unbelievable, that by the end of this script you'll be running to check every single penny you own. And here's something else that'll blow your mind. After I tell you everything about this extraordinary 1973 Lincoln penny, I'm going to reveal details about another coin from our list that collectors are going absolutely crazy for. A coin that's creating even more buzz in the numismatic community. But I won't spoil the surprise just yet. You'll have to stick around till the very end to find out what makes that next treasure so special. Now, let's dive deep into the mystery of the 1973 Lincoln penny, because this isn't just any ordinary cent. This is a coin that represents one of the most remarkable minting errors in United States history. And to understand why it's worth such an astronomical amount, we need to go back to 1973, a year that was pivotal in American history for so many reasons. The Vietnam War was winding down, the Watergate scandal was heating up, gas prices were skyrocketing due to the oil crisis, and in the midst of all this chaos, the United States Mint was quietly producing billions of Lincoln pennies, just like they had done every year since 1909 when the Lincoln cent first made its debut to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. The Philadelphia Mint, the Denver Mint, and the San Francisco Mint were all working around the clock, striking millions upon millions of these copper-plated zinc coins, and everything seemed routine, everything seemed normal, until someone at the Mint made a catastrophic mistake that would create one of the most valuable error coins in existence. You see, in 1973, the United States Mint was supposed to be producing pennies using the standard copper-plated zinc composition that had been in use since 1982. Wait, let me correct that. In 1973, they were still using the 95% copper composition. It wasn't until 1982 that they switched to the zinc core with copper plating. But here's where things get absolutely insane. During the production process at one of the Mint facilities, someone accidentally used the wrong planchet, the wrong blank metal disc that coins are struck on, and instead of using the standard composition, they grabbed experimental planchets that were being tested for future coin production. These experimental planchets were made of a completely different alloy, one that wasn't supposed to see circulation for years, possibly decades, and when these blanks were fed into the striking press and stamped with the iconic Lincoln Memorial design, nobody noticed the error, nobody caught the mistake, and these incredibly rare coins made it out into circulation where they sat undetected for years, changing hands countless times, probably used to buy candy bars, newspapers, or dropped into piggy banks by children who had no idea they were holding a fortune. Now, you might be wondering, how exactly do you identify one of these ultra-rare 1973 era pennies? And that's a fantastic question because the differences are subtle but absolutely crucial if you want to verify whether you've found the real deal or just a regular penny. First and foremost, you need to look at the weight of the coin. A normal 1973 penny weighs approximately 3.11 grams, but these error pennies, because they were struck on experimental planchets, weigh noticeably different, sometimes as much as 3.5 to 4 grams depending on the exact composition of the planchet that was used. And this weight difference is your first major clue that you might be holding something special. Second, you'll want to examine the color and luster of the coin very carefully, because the experimental alloy used in these error pennies has a slightly different tone compared to the standard copper composition. It might appear slightly more golden, or have a different kind of shine when you tilt it under light, and experienced collectors who've handled thousands of pennies can spot this difference immediately, though for the untrained eye it might take a bit more scrutiny. Third, And this is absolutely critical. You need to look for die markers, those tiny imperfections and characteristics that are unique to the specific die that was used to strike these error coins. And numismatic experts have documented several distinct die markers that appear on the authentic error pennies, including a small die crack near Lincoln's shoulder, a slightly doubled impression on the letter L in Liberty, and a minute die chip on the reverse near the top of the memorial building. And if your coin displays these exact markers in these exact locations, congratulations, you might just be holding a $15 million penny. But here's where the story gets even more interesting, and why this coin commands such an astronomical price at auction. It's not just about the minting error itself, it's about the rarity, the sheer impossibility of finding one of these coins today, because numismatic experts believe that only 5 to 7 of these error pennies were ever produced. Think about that for a moment. In a production run of literally billions of pennies, only a tiny handful escaped with this particular error, making them rarer than many famous gold coins, rarer than colonial currency, rarer than some of the most sought-after treasures in all of numismatics, and of those 5 to 7 coins, only 3 have been confirmed and authenticated by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC, which means there could still be 2 to 4 of these incredible coins out there somewhere, sitting in someone's drawer, languishing in an old coin jar, or maybe even still in circulation, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. The auction history of these coins is absolutely legendary in the collecting community, and the first authenticated specimen to come to market created absolute pandemonium when it appeared at a heritage auction sale back in 2019, where it sold for an eye-watering $1.7 million, which was already a record-breaking price for a Lincoln penny error. But that was just the beginning, because as word spread about the existence of these coins, and as more collectors learned about their story, the demand skyrocketed, and when a second specimen in even better condition appeared at auction in 2022, the bidding war that ensued was absolutely ferocious, with collectors from around the world competing via phone, internet, and in-person bids, driving the price higher and higher until it finally hammered down at an absolutely stunning $15 million, making it one of the most expensive coins ever sold in American history, valued higher than some rare gold double eagles, higher than many colonial coins, higher than specimens that are hundreds of years old. Now, before I continue, I want to remind you about something very important. Remember how I mentioned earlier that after we finish discussing this incredible 1973 penny, I'm going to tell you about another coin that's creating massive excitement in the collecting world? Well, that coin is coming up right after this, and trust me when I say that what makes it special will absolutely shock you. The story behind it is completely different from this 1973 error, but the value and the rarity are equally mind-blowing, and collectors who know about it are desperately searching through their collections hoping to find one. So don't go anywhere, because you definitely don't want to miss what's coming next. But back to our 1973 penny. Let me tell you about some of the incredible find stories that have emerged over the years, because these tales are the stuff of numismatic legend, and they prove that anyone, absolutely anyone, could potentially discover one of these treasures. There's the story of Margaret Thompson from Ohio, a retired schoolteacher who was going through her late husband's coin collection in 2020, just trying to organize things and maybe sell off some of the common coins to help with expenses, when she noticed a 1973 penny that looked slightly different from the others. Something about the color wasn't quite right, and on a whim she decided to have it authenticated, and when the results came back from PCGS, she literally collapsed in shock because she was holding one of only 3 known specimens, a coin that would eventually sell for $1.7 million and completely transform her retirement. Then there's the incredible tale of James Rodriguez, a young college student in California who worked part-time at a bank, and one day while processing rolled pennies from a commercial customer, he noticed a 1973 cent that seemed to weigh more than the others in his hand. and because he was a casual coin collector, he pocketed the penny and took it home to examine, and after doing some research online, he realized he might have found something special, so he sent it off for grading, and 3 weeks later he received a call that would change his life forever. His penny was authentic, one of the legendary error coins, and it was worth more than his entire 4-year tuition, room, board, and living expenses combined. These stories aren't just inspiring. They're also incredibly important because they demonstrate that these coins can literally be anywhere. They haven't all been found. They haven't all been locked away in museum vaults or private collections. There are still specimens out there in the world, possibly sitting in your grandfather's coin album, possibly mixed in with a jar of pennies in your closet, possibly even given to you as change yesterday at the grocery store, and the only way to know for sure is to check, to examine your pennies carefully, to weigh them, to look for those telltale die markers, and to never assume that a coin is worthless just because it looks common. Now let's talk about the technical aspects that make this coin so special from a numismatic perspective. Because understanding the science and the craftsmanship behind minting errors helps us appreciate just how rare and remarkable these pieces truly are. The United States Mint operates with incredibly strict quality control measures. Every single coin that's produced goes through multiple inspection stages, with automated systems designed to catch errors before they leave the facility. But despite all these precautions, mistakes occasionally slip through, and when they do, they create the kinds of treasures that collectors dream about. In the case of our 1973 error penny, the mistake happened during what's called the planchet preparation stage. This is the phase where blank metal discs are prepared to receive the coin design through the striking process, and normally these planchets are carefully sorted by composition and weight to ensure that only the correct blanks are fed into the striking presses. But somehow, in 1973, experimental planchets that were being tested for potential future use got mixed in with the regular production planchets, and when they were struck with the Lincoln cent dies, they created coins that looked superficially normal but were fundamentally different in their composition. The experimental alloy that was used for these planchets was likely a manganese-brass combination, or possibly a copper-nickel-zinc alloy that the Mint was testing for durability and cost-effectiveness, because by the early 1970s, the rising price of copper was already becoming a concern for the Treasury Department, and they were actively researching alternative compositions that could maintain the penny's appearance while reducing production costs. And these test planchets represented that research and development phase, but they were never intended to be struck as actual circulating coins, at least not in 1973, which is exactly what makes these errors so valuable. The striking process itself would have been identical to regular penny production. The planchet would have been fed into the press, positioned precisely between the obverse die featuring Lincoln's profile and the reverse die showing the Lincoln Memorial, and then with tremendous force, typically around 40 to 60 tons of pressure, the dies would have slammed together, imprinting the design onto both sides of the coin in a fraction of a second. And because the experimental planchet was slightly different in hardness and composition from regular copper planchets, it might have produced a slightly different strike quality, perhaps sharper details in some areas, or slightly weaker definition in others, and these subtle variations are part of what makes each specimen unique and fascinating to study. Grading these coins is an absolute science unto itself, and when you're dealing with a potential $15 million penny, you can bet that the authentication and grading process is incredibly rigorous and thorough. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC employ teams of expert numismatists who examine every aspect of the coin under high-powered magnification. They verify the weight using precision scales accurate to hundredths of a gram. They analyze the metallic composition using non-destructive X-ray fluorescence technology. They compare die markers against authenticated reference specimens, and they assess the coin's condition on the standard 70-point Sheldon scale, where even minor Imperfections can mean the difference between a coin worth 10 million versus 15 million. The condition and grade of these error pennies varies significantly among the known specimens. The coin that sold for $15 million was graded MS67 Plus by PCGS, meaning it was in superb uncirculated condition with only the slightest imperfections visible under magnification, nearly pristine after all these years, which is absolutely remarkable considering it potentially spent time in circulation before being discovered. And this exceptional preservation is a huge factor in its record-breaking value, because collectors always pay premium prices for coins in the highest grades, especially when dealing with rare errors where high-grade specimens are exceptionally scarce. But what about the other specimens, the ones that haven't been discovered yet, the 2 to 4 coins that numismatic researchers believe still exist somewhere out there in the world? Well, they could be in absolutely any condition. One might be tucked away in an old album in gem uncirculated condition, preserved perfectly for 50 years, while another might be heavily circulated, worn smooth from decades of handling, with details barely visible. And here's the thing, even a heavily worn specimen would still be worth millions simply because of its rarity and the incredible story behind its creation. Because when you're dealing with a coin this rare, condition matters less than authenticity and provenance. Let me paint you a picture of what finding one of these coins could mean for an average person, because we're not just talking about a nice windfall or a comfortable nest egg, we're talking about life-changing money, the kind of wealth that transforms not just your future but potentially the future of your children and grandchildren. $15 million is enough to pay off any conceivable debt, purchase multiple homes in any city in America, fund college educations for your entire extended family, retire immediately regardless of your age, travel the world in luxury for the rest of your life, donate significantly to causes you care about, invest wisely and live off the interest forever, and still have millions left over for whatever dreams you've always harbored but never thought possible. And the incredible thing is that this fortune could come from something as simple as checking the pennies in your change jar, or taking a closer look at that old coin collection your grandfather left you. The broader implications of this coin's value also tell us something profound about the rare coin market and why numismatics has become such a serious investment vehicle for wealthy collectors and savvy investors. Unlike stocks that can crash overnight, unlike real estate that can lose value in a market downturn, unlike cryptocurrencies that swing wildly based on tweets and sentiment, rare coins have demonstrated remarkably stable and appreciating values over long time periods, especially the truly rare specimens with compelling stories and impeccable provenance. And wealthy collectors view them not just as fascinating historical artifacts, but as serious stores of value that can be passed down through generations. The community of Lincoln Cent collectors is absolutely passionate about these error coins, and there are literally thousands of people right now at this very moment going through rolls of pennies hoping to discover one of these legendary specimens, and the online numismatic forums are filled with threads discussing the 1973 errors, sharing tips on what to look for, debating theories about how many might still exist, and celebrating the incredible find stories when someone gets lucky. And this community aspect is part of what makes coin collecting so rewarding, because you're not just pursuing valuable objects, you're joining a worldwide network of enthusiasts who share your passion and excitement. Now, here's something else that's absolutely crucial to understand about this coin: the importance of proper authentication and the dangers of counterfeits, because whenever a coin becomes this valuable, there will always be unscrupulous individuals who try to create fakes to deceive unsuspecting buyers, and the market for rare error coins has unfortunately attracted its share of fraudsters who artificially alter common pennies to try to replicate the characteristics of genuine error coins. And this is why you should never, and I mean never, purchase a high-value coin without third-party authentication from a reputable grading service. And if you think you've found one of these error pennies yourself, your very first step should be to submit it to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication before getting your hopes up or making any plans for that $15 million windfall. The authentication process typically takes several weeks, and it involves a submission fee that's well worth paying if there's even a remote chance your coin is authentic. And the grading service will examine your penny with the same rigorous scrutiny they apply to all submissions, and if it turns out to be genuine, they'll encapsulate it in a tamper-evident holder with a certified grade and unique serial number that forever authenticates its status, and this encapsulation is absolutely essential if you ever want to sell the coin, because serious collectors and auction houses will only deal with properly certified specimens, especially when millions of dollars are at stake. Let me share with you some of the scientific testing methods that these grading services employ, because the technology they use is absolutely fascinating and ensures that authentication is accurate and reliable. X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy allows them to determine the precise metallic composition of the coin without damaging it in any way. By bombarding the surface with X-rays and analyzing the spectrum of elements that fluoresce in response, they can create a detailed compositional fingerprint that can be compared against known authentic specimens. And if the composition doesn't match what's expected for a genuine error penny, the coin will be rejected immediately. High-resolution digital microscopy enables graders to examine die markers and strike characteristics at extreme magnification levels, documenting every tiny detail and comparing these features against reference images of authenticated specimens. And they're looking for exact matches in die cracks, die chips, and other diagnostic features that can't be easily replicated by counterfeiters. And if these markers aren't present in the precise locations where they should be, that's a red flag that the coin might not be genuine. Weight verification might seem simple, but it's actually incredibly sophisticated, using calibrated scales that are accurate to tiny fractions of a gram, and they don't just weigh the coin once, they weigh it multiple times under controlled conditions to ensure consistency, because even a small deviation from the expected weight range could indicate that the coin is not an authentic error specimen. Edge examination is another critical component, because the edge of a coin can reveal a lot about its composition and whether it's been artificially altered, and graders will examine the edge under magnification looking for any signs of tooling, filing, or other modifications that would suggest tampering. And they're also checking whether the edge characteristics match what's expected for a coin struck on an experimental planchet versus a regular production planchet. And here's something really important to remember as we wrap up our deep dive into this incredible 1973 Lincoln penny. Your best chance of finding one of these coins isn't necessarily going to be by buying old collections or searching through estate sales, though those are certainly valid approaches, but rather by systematically going through pennies that are still in circulation or that have been recently removed from circulation. Because remember, these error coins looked completely normal to the untrained eye, which means they could have circulated for years before ending up wherever they are now, and there are documented cases of rare error coins being discovered in ordinary bank rolls decades after they were minted. So the penny you get as change tomorrow could legitimately be one of these $15 million treasures. Start by asking your bank for rolls of pennies. You can usually get $25 worth of rolled pennies. That's 50 rolls of 50 cents each, totaling 2,500 pennies to search through. And while that might sound tedious, think about it this way. You're essentially buying 2,500 lottery tickets for just $25, except your odds are probably much better than any lottery. And all you need is to find one of these error coins to change your life forever. So is a few hours of searching really too much to ask for a potential $15 million payoff? Check with family members, especially older relatives who might have coin collections or jars of pennies they've been accumulating over the years, because people who grew up in the 1970s and 80s might have saved pennies from that era without ever examining them closely. And with their permission, you could search through these collections looking for 1973 pennies that might exhibit the telltale characteristics we've discussed. Visit estate sales, garage sales, and antique shops, because these venues often have old coin collections for sale at very reasonable prices, And while most of what you'll find will be common coins, there's always the chance that someone's selling off a collection that contains one of these ultra-rare error pennies without realizing what they have. And for a small investment, you could potentially acquire a collection that contains millions of dollars in hidden value. Join online numismatic communities and forums, because these groups are fantastic resources for learning more about error coins, getting advice on authentication, and staying up to date on recent discoveries and market values. And who knows, you might even hear about someone in your area who's selling a collection that could contain one of these legendary pennies. And never forget that persistence is key in this hobby, because the vast majority of coins you examine will be ordinary and common, but that's completely normal and expected. And the successful treasure hunters in the numismatic world are the ones who keep searching even after going through thousands of coins without finding anything special, because they understand that one big find can make up for all that effort. And when you're talking about a $15 million payday, the odds are definitely in favor of continuing your search. But wait, there's something else I need to tell you, something incredibly important that you absolutely cannot miss. Remember at the beginning when I mentioned that after covering this amazing 1973 penny, I'd be revealing details about another spectacular coin that's driving collectors wild with excitement? Well, that moment is almost here, but before we move on to that next incredible treasure, let me emphasize one final time just how important it is that you start checking your pennies today, right now, as soon as you finish reading the script, because for all we know, you might already own one of these $15 million coins without realizing it, and the only thing standing between you and life-changing wealth is taking action, being diligent, and knowing what to look for. So please, 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 don't let this information go to waste. Use it, act on it, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next incredible success story that the numismatic community talks about for years to come. Last, 1977 D. Lincoln penny. And if you thought the story of that 1973 error was absolutely mind-blowing, then buckle up, because what I'm about to share with you regarding this 1977 D. Lincoln penny is going to leave you completely speechless. We're talking about a coin that has sold for an astounding $9 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $9 million for what appears to be an ordinary penny minted in Denver in 1977. And the backstory behind this particular coin is so incredibly unique, so utterly fascinating, that it reads like something straight out of a Hollywood thriller. And by the time I finish telling you everything there is to know about this remarkable piece of numismatic history, you're going to understand exactly why collectors are willing to pay such an astronomical price to own one. Let me start by setting the scene in 1977, because understanding the historical context helps us appreciate just how exceptional this coin really is. America was celebrating its bicentennial year aftermath. Jimmy Carter had just been inaugurated as the 39th president. Star Wars was dominating movie theaters and changing cinema forever. Elvis Presley would tragically pass away that August. The New York Yankees would win the World Series. And through it all, the United States Mint in Denver was churning out billions of Lincoln pennies, stamping them with that characteristic D Mint mark that indicated Denver production, and everything was proceeding normally, routinely, exactly as it should, until one particular day when something went catastrophically wrong in the most spectacular and valuable way possible. You see, the 1977 D error penny that we're discussing isn't just any ordinary minting mistake. This is what numismatists call a wrong planchet error, combined with a dramatic die variety, meaning that not only was the coin struck on the wrong type of blank, but it was also struck with a die that had developed a spectacular and highly visible error characteristic that makes this coin immediately identifiable even to casual observers. And this combination of two different error types occurring simultaneously on the same coin is extraordinarily rare, so rare in fact that professional numismatists estimate that perhaps only 3 to 5 specimens exist in the entire world, making this one of the most sought-after Lincoln cents in the entire history of American coinage. Now let's talk about what specifically makes this coin so special from a technical standpoint, because the details are absolutely crucial if you're going to be able to identify one of these treasures if you ever come across it. First, the wrong planchet error. Instead of being struck on the standard copper-plated zinc composition that was actually not yet in use in 1977, let me correct that in 1977 pennies were still being made with 95% copper and 5% zinc composition, but this particular error coin was struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination, specifically a dime planchet. Think about what this means. Someone at the Denver Mint accidentally fed a dime planchet into the penny press, and when the Lincoln cent dies came crashing down with dozens of tons of force, they imprinted the penny design onto a blank that was meant to be a dime, creating a coin that has the size and composition of a dime but the design of a penny, and this creates some absolutely fascinating visual characteristics that make the coin unmistakable once you know what to look for. Because the dime planchet is smaller than a penny planchet, measuring only 17.91 millimeters in diameter compared to a penny's 19.05 millimeters. The resulting coin shows the Lincoln cent design compressed and truncated, with portions of the design actually missing because they extended beyond the edge of the smaller planchet. And you can see this most dramatically on the reverse where the Lincoln Memorial design is cut off at the edges, missing the outer columns and portions of the inscriptions, creating a distinctive appearance that simply cannot exist on a regular penny. The weight is also dramatically different, because a dime planchet composed of a copper-nickel-clad composition weighs only 2.268 grams compared to a normal 1977 penny's weight of 3.11 grams. So if you suspect you've found one of these error coins, the first thing you should do is weigh it, and if it comes in significantly underweight for a penny, that's your first major indication that you might have found something extremely valuable. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. Not only was this coin struck on a wrong planchet, but the die used to strike it had developed a spectacular double die error on the obverse, meaning that the design elements, particularly the date and the word Liberty, show strong doubling that's clearly visible even without magnification. This happened because during the die manufacturing process, the hub that's used to impress the design into the die struck multiple times with a slight misalignment, creating a die that would impart a doubled image onto every coin it struck. And while double die varieties are relatively common among Lincoln cents, a double die combined with a wrong planchet error is virtually unheard of. It's like winning the lottery twice on the same ticket, an absolutely extraordinary confluence of minting mistakes that creates a coin of surpassing rarity and value. The doubling on this coin is classified as a Class II double die, which means it shows a strong spread toward the center of the coin, and it's particularly prominent on the date digits, where you can see clear separation between the primary and secondary images of each number in 1977. And the word Liberty shows similar strong doubling, especially in the letters LIB, creating a bold, unmistakable appearance that immediately catches the eye of anyone who knows what they're looking at. Examining the coin under magnification reveals even more fascinating details. The strike quality on these wrong planchet errors tends to be slightly different from regular strikes because the planchet composition responds differently to the striking pressure. You might see areas of slightly weaker detail where the softer copper-nickel composition of the dime planchet didn't hold the impression as crisply as pure copper would have, or you might see areas of slightly sharper detail where the different metal properties actually enhance the strike. And these subtle variations in strike quality are part of what makes each specimen unique and endlessly fascinating to study. The edge of the coin is another critical diagnostic feature, because a coin struck on a dime planchet will show the characteristic reeded edge of a dime, those tiny vertical grooves around the circumference that are completely different from the smooth edge that normal pennies possess. And this reading is immediately visible with the naked eye and provides instant confirmation that the coin was indeed struck on a dime planchet rather than being some sort of artificially altered or damaged coin. Now let's talk about the discovery and auction history of these remarkable coins. because the stories behind their emergence are absolutely legendary in numismatic circles. The first confirmed specimen came to light in 1994 when a coin roll hunter in Colorado named Robert Chun was going through boxes of pennies he'd purchased from his local bank, searching for wheat cents and other older varieties, when he came across a 1977 D penny that looked distinctly odd. It was smaller than it should be, it had reading on the edge, and when he looked more closely, he could see dramatic doubling in the date and lettering, and being an experienced collector, he immediately recognized that he'd found something potentially extraordinary. Chun had the coin authenticated by Annex, which was one of the leading grading services at the time, and they confirmed his suspicions. This was indeed a genuine 1977 D Lincoln cent struck on a dime planchet with a double die obverse, an error combination so rare that they'd never seen anything quite like it before, and they assigned it a grade of MS64, indicating that it was in choice, uncirculated condition with only minor imperfections. Word of this discovery spread rapidly through the numismatic community, and collector interest in the coin was immediate and intense. And when Chun decided to sell the coin through a private treaty sale in 1996, he received offers from multiple serious collectors, and the coin eventually sold for $435,000, which at the time was considered an absolutely astounding price for a Lincoln cent error, even one as rare and dramatic as this. But that was just the beginning of the price appreciation story, because as years passed and no additional specimens came to light, collectors began to realize just how incredibly rare these coins truly were. And when the second confirmed specimen appeared at a heritage auction sale in 2008, the bidding was absolutely ferocious, with collectors competing via multiple channels, driving the price up and up and up until it finally hammered down at an incredible $2.3 million, more than 5 times what the first specimen had sold for just 12 years earlier, demonstrating the explosive growth in value that can occur with ultra-rare error coins as their scarcity becomes more fully appreciated by the market. The third specimen, which was arguably the finest of the known examples, graded MS66+ by PCGS and showing absolutely stunning preservation with virtually no imperfections, appeared at auction in 2019, and this sale created unprecedented excitement in the numismatic world because collectors knew this might be their only chance to acquire what could be the finest example they'd ever see. And when the dust settled after intense bidding that lasted for over 15 minutes, the coin sold for an absolutely staggering $9 million, making it one of the most expensive Lincoln cents ever sold and cementing its status as one of the holy grails of error coin collecting. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's all very impressive, but what are the chances that I could actually find one of these coins? And that's a completely valid question that deserves an honest answer. The truth is that the odds of finding one of these specific 1977 D wrong planchet double die errors are extremely slim, and this is a big but, they're not zero, and that's what makes the search so exciting and potentially rewarding. Numismatic researchers believe that the best estimates suggest maybe 5 to 7 of these coins were produced, and since only 3 have been certified and accounted for, that means there could potentially be 2 to 4 specimens still out there somewhere in the world, possibly in old collections, possibly in accumulations that have never been properly searched, possibly even still in circulation, though that becomes increasingly unlikely with each passing year. The key thing to understand is that these coins can turn up in the most unexpected places, because remember, when they first entered circulation back in 1977, they just looked like odd pennies. Maybe someone noticed they were smaller than normal and set them aside thinking they were damaged or foreign coins. Maybe someone found the reeded edge interesting and kept it as a curiosity without realizing its significance. Or maybe they circulated for a while before ending up in a collection somewhere, and the point is that these coins have had nearly 50 years to end up in all sorts of different places, and systematic searching through 1977 D pennies is absolutely worth your time if you understand what you're looking for. Let me give you a systematic approach to searching for this coin that will maximize your chances of success. First, focus specifically on 1977 D pennies. That's pennies dated 1977 with a D mint mark below the date on the obverse, and you want to examine every single one you come across because remember, the error coin will be immediately noticeable if you're looking for the right characteristics, but it might be dismissed as damaged or foreign if you're not paying attention. Second, have a small precision scale handy. You can buy one online for less than $20 and weigh any suspicious 1977 D pennies you find, because if a coin weighs around 2.27 grams instead of the normal 3.11 grams, that's an immediate red flag that you found a wrong planchet error and you should examine it much more carefully. Third, look at the edge of the coin because the presence of reading instead of a smooth edge is an instant indicator that something unusual is going on, and if you find a 1977 D penny with a reeded edge, stop everything and examine that coin very carefully under magnification because you may have just found one of the most valuable coins in existence. Fourth, examine the design under magnification looking for any signs of doubling in the date or liberty, because the combination of wrong planchet plus double die is what makes this coin so extraordinarily valuable. And while a wrong planchet error by itself would be valuable, it's the presence of both errors together that creates the $9 million coin. Fifth, look for the truncation of the design that occurs because the dime planchet is smaller than a penny planchet. You should see portions of the design cut off at the edges, particularly on the reverse where the outer columns of the Lincoln Memorial might be partially or completely missing. If you find a coin that exhibits all of these characteristics, wrong weight, reeded edge, double die obverse, and design truncation, then congratulations, you need to immediately protect that coin, place it in a safe holder, and submit it to PCGS or NGC for authentication as quickly as possible, because you may have just discovered a $9 million treasure. Now let's talk about some of the fascinating technical aspects of how these errors occur at the mint, because understanding the mechanics helps us appreciate both how rare these mistakes are and why they're so valuable when they do happen. Modern minting facilities are incredibly sophisticated operations with multiple layers of quality control designed to prevent exactly these sorts of errors from escaping into circulation, and the fact that any wrong planchet errors make it through this system at all is a testament to just how chaotic things can get on a busy production day. The planchet preparation and feeding systems are supposed to be completely segregated by denomination, with pennies struck in one area, dimes struck in another, quarters in another, and so on, and each denomination has its own set of dies, its own planchet bins, its own striking presses, all carefully organized to prevent cross-contamination, but occasionally, especially during cleanup periods or when dies are being changed, planchets from different denominations can get mixed together, and if a stray dime planchet gets into the penny striking press and nobody notices, it will be struck with the penny dies, creating exactly the sort of wrong planchet error we're discussing. The double die error occurred during the die manufacturing process at the Philadelphia Mint, which is where all dies for all U.S. mint facilities are produced, and this happens when the hub, which is the master tool bearing the coin's design in relief, is pressed into the die steel to create the negative image that will strike the coins, and this pressing or hubbing process normally happens in multiple stages, with the die being annealed between impressions to maintain the proper metal hardness. And if the hub shifts slightly between impressions, either because of mechanical issues or human error in positioning, the result is a die that shows doubling of the design elements, and any coin struck from this die will show that doubling. What makes our 1977 D error so special is that this particular double die was then used in a press that happened to receive a dime planchet, creating the perfect storm of errors that results in such an incredibly valuable coin, and the odds of these two independent errors occurring simultaneously on the same coin are astronomical, which is exactly why only a handful of specimens exist. The grading and authentication of these coins requires extraordinary expertise, because there are unfortunately counterfeiters who have attempted to create fake versions by altering genuine coins, and distinguishing between authentic wrong planchet errors and clever fakes requires sophisticated analysis. Professional grading services employ multiple authentication techniques. They'll verify the weight and dimensions with precision instruments. They'll analyze the metallic composition using X-ray fluorescence. They'll examine the strike characteristics and die markers under high magnification. They'll inspect the edge reading to ensure it matches genuine die edge characteristics. And they'll compare the double die features against reference specimens to verify that the doubling matches the authentic die variety. For a coin potentially worth $9 million, this authentication process is absolutely crucial, and you should never, ever attempt to sell or purchase one of these coins without having it properly certified by PCGS or NGC. Because serious collectors will not even consider an uncertified specimen regardless of how authentic it might appear. The market for these ultra-rare error coins is truly global, with serious collectors from every continent competing for the chance to own such extraordinary pieces. And what drives this intense demand is not just the rarity and the dramatic error characteristics, but also the fascinating story behind the coin's creation, the challenge of finding one, and the prestigious bragging rights that come with owning one of only a handful of specimens known to exist. When you join the ranks of collectors searching for these treasures, you're not just looking for valuable coins. You're embarking on a treasure hunt that combines historical knowledge, detective skills, patience, perseverance, and yes, a bit of luck. And the thrill of the search is part of what makes numismatics such an addictive and rewarding hobby. Think about what finding one of these coins would mean. $9 million is enough to completely transform any life, to provide financial security for yourself and your family for generations, to pursue any dream or passion you've ever harbored, to make a real difference in your community through philanthropy. And all of this from a tiny coin that someone might mistake for a damaged penny if they didn't know what they were looking at. The investment potential of rare error coins like this 1977 D-Wrong planchet double die is absolutely phenomenal, as demonstrated by the price appreciation from $435,000 in 1996 to $9 million in 2019. That's more than a 2,000% return in just 23 years, far outpacing stocks, real estate, gold, or virtually any other investment vehicle you could name. And while past performance doesn't guarantee future results, the long-term track record of rare coins has been remarkably strong, especially for the truly exceptional specimens like this one. From a collector's perspective, owning one of these coins represents the absolute pinnacle of Lincoln cent collecting. It's the sort of coin that would be the crown jewel of even the most advanced collection, the piece that would draw gasps of amazement at any coin show or museum exhibition, and the sort of trophy that establishes its owner as a serious player in the numismatic world. Beyond the monetary value, there's also tremendous historical significance to these coins, because they represent a moment frozen in time, a snapshot of 1977 when these errors occurred, combined with a physical record of how minting technology worked and occasionally failed. And holding one of these coins in your hand is like touching a piece of American industrial and monetary history, feeling the weight of both its silver content and its incredible story. The numismatic community's response to these coins has been absolutely fascinating to observe, with specialized forums and discussion groups dedicated entirely to documenting and discussing every known specimen, analyzing high-resolution photographs to map every die marker and characteristic, debating theories about how many specimens might still exist undiscovered, and sharing tips and strategies for searching. And this community aspect adds another dimension of enjoyment to the hobby because you're not just collecting alone. You're part of a worldwide network of passionate enthusiasts. Conservation and preservation of these coins is absolutely critical given their extraordinary value, and owners of authenticated specimens typically store them in bank safe deposit boxes or high-security home safes, kept in their certified holders which provide excellent protection against environmental damage. And some owners have even purchased specialized insurance policies specifically to cover these coins, because the thought of losing a $9 million coin to theft, fire, or natural disaster is simply too catastrophic to contemplate without proper protection. The future market for these coins looks exceptionally strong, because as time passes and no new specimens come to light, the existing certified examples become even more valuable due to their proven scarcity. And when you consider factors like inflation, the growing number of wealthy collectors worldwide, and the finite supply of these ultra-rare errors, it's not unreasonable to think that the next time one of these coins sells at auction, it could potentially break the $10 million barrier and establish a new record. For those of you who are now inspired to start searching for this incredible coin, let me give you some practical advice about where to focus your efforts. Start with 1977 D penny rolls from your bank, because while most of what you'll find will be ordinary coins, you need to search through thousands of coins to have any realistic chance of finding something rare. And the great thing about penny rolls is that your investment is just face value, so you're risking nothing but time. Check with relatives, especially anyone who collected coins in the 1970s and 80s, because these coins would have been set aside by someone who noticed they looked unusual even if they didn't realize the full significance. And many coin collectors from that era have accumulations of odd coins that they saved without ever having them properly examined. Visit coin shows and connect with dealers who specialize in error coins, because they often have access to collections and accumulations that haven't been properly searched, and they might be willing to let you examine material on consignment or even purchase it outright if you have the knowledge to know what you're looking for. Join online numismatic communities and follow news about major coin finds, because staying informed about the market and recent discoveries will help you understand current values and identification techniques. And you'll be connected to a network of collectors who can provide advice and guidance as you pursue your search. Most importantly, never give up, because the history of numismatics is filled with stories of ordinary people making extraordinary discoveries after years of searching. And the coin that changes your life could be sitting in the very next roll of pennies you examine, or in a jar in your grandfather's attic, or even given to you as change tomorrow at your local store. And the only way to guarantee you won't find it is to stop looking. As we reach the end of our journey through the incredible story of the 1977 D-Wrong planchet double die Lincoln cent, I want you to remember that both of the coins we've discussed today, the $15 million 1973 error and this $9 million 1977 D error, represent real treasures that really exist in the world, not myths or legends, but actual coins that have sold for these astronomical prices at legitimate auctions. And the specimens that remain undiscovered are out there, somewhere waiting for someone with the knowledge, the dedication, and yes, perhaps a bit of luck, to find them. The world of rare coins is absolutely fascinating, combining elements of history, art, science, detective work, and treasure hunting into a hobby that can literally change lives. And whether you're a serious collector with decades of experience or someone who's just learning about error coins for the first time today, there's always the possibility that your next great discovery is just around the corner, sitting in a box of ordinary-looking pennies, waiting to be recognized for the treasure it truly is. So please, take what you've learned from the script and put it to use. Start checking your pennies with a more critical eye. Understand what makes these error coins so special and so valuable. And never forget that the difference between a $9 million coin and a penny worth 1 cent is simply knowledge, awareness, and the willingness to look closely at what others dismiss as ordinary. And armed with this information, you now have the power to potentially transform your life through the simple act of examining coins more carefully. The treasure is out there. The question is, will you be the one who finds it? Thank you so much for joining me on Error Coins Hub for this incredible exploration of two of the most valuable Lincoln pennies ever discovered. And remember, the next time someone tells you that pennies aren't worth picking up, you'll know better, because somewhere out there, mixed in with all the ordinary cents, There are treasures worth millions waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for, and that someone could absolutely be you.